Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the ISF Bright Talk channel today. My name is Dan Norman. I'm one of our regional directors at the ISF, and I'm here with Marcus Berglund, CISO at SEB, and Knarik Avetisyan, who is a security awareness and compliance specialist at Schibsted. And what we're going to do today is we are going to be discussing how organizations can strengthen the security behaviors and wider security culture across their organization. Now, it's one of the biggest challenges, in my humble opinion, addressing the challenge of human error, insider threats, and creating an environment where individuals are empowered to accurately report potential incidents, but also just be generally secure. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, to change behaviors, but I'm hoping that the experts on the call can share some insights about how they've implemented and invested in more human-centered security programs and some of the best practice you can take away and apply in your own organization. However, before we open up the panel, there's just a couple of housekeeping items to cover. The presentation will last for about 45 minutes, and if anyone has any questions, please do enter them into the panel, the pane on the right-hand side of your screen. And at the end, we can cover any questions. All viewers are automatically muted. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, then please just leave the chat, leave the panel, and then rejoin. You may want to try entering on a different web browser, as Marcus found out minutes before the call today. But finally, the session will be recorded and it will be available on demand on the ISF Bright Talk channel. So if you have missed it, or you'd want any of your peers to see the presentation, feel free to forward on the recording to your peers. Okay, well, look, I'll start by setting the scene. So, what is the high-level business problem, and then I'll work my way around the panel to get insight there. But essentially, the statistics that we've seen at the ISF suggest that a significant portion of security incidents that some way come down to either human error, negligence, a mistake, clicking on something they might not have meant to, letting someone in to the building that shouldn't be allowed to. Now, all of these things are a challenge to manage or even mitigate. And what we've also seen is typical awareness activities are failing to have an impact. So, for example, phishing simulations, e-learning, it's not really addressing the fundamental problems, and trying to scale that up and transform security behaviors is arguably one of the biggest challenges that security practitioners and cyber risk managers face. So I'll start with Marcus. As a CISO, what are the types of risks that you are trying to overcome when addressing security behavior and culture?
Then exactly as you said, that the human is the weakest link, and we want to protect and also enable business. And we have the insider risk, we have the human error. Most of the incidents are connected to the human error. And even if it's a technical incident, often the human has built the systems and so on. And we also see that the threat landscape has become more severe and complex. Technology take steps forward, but what about the security culture, the security behavior? We must keep the same pace there also and foster good security. And I think that's the biggest challenge. But on the other hand, I think it's part of the business culture. You must align the security culture work with the culture you have in your company.
Okay, well, thank you. And Knarik, just to build on that, so Schibsted has a very different business model to SEB. So what are your thoughts there? What are the type of risks that you as a security awareness and compliance specialist are trying to overcome?
First of all, I agree with everything Marcus said. All of that is true for us too. However, we are a media company, and SEB is a bank, so our challenges are very different. I can talk about the recent challenges we've been facing, if I can be a little more concrete.
Yes, definitely go
Yeah,
for it.
so our risks late as of say 6 months often concern our newspapers and journalists, especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Our journalists' physical safety and the safety of our sources and our newspapers being operational is one of our top priority, as it provides an essential service to the society here in Sweden and in Norway, as we own and operate one of the biggest newspapers in the Nordics. And we have seen an increase in various attacks towards that part of Schibsted after the invasion, and have made appropriate measures to keep our employees, our journalists, our sources, our customers safe, as their information safe from various attacks in this vector.
Okay. So it's interesting perspective. I mean, in terms of the true honest safety of a journalist, I can imagine that protecting your sources is a massively important element of
Yes.
the integrity of stories, really.
And
But when it comes
I
to,
can
I
see
see-
also as a bank, we have a long tradition working with financial risks and also with fraud. We see similar aspects around personal safety, physical safety, and now we must also work with non-financial risk and build that culture stronger with this new threat landscape. So I agree with what you said, that we also see different patterns, also with the geopolitical landscape which we have right now, which has really changed the attacks on critical infrastructure. And we from security, we can just do what we do. Everyone in a company must work with security. And we also get new business models, new way of working, for example, agile way of working, which also put a higher responsibility on each individual in the development and so on and so on. So I think it's very important to strengthen both security culture, behavior, and awareness in companies.
Yeah. Just to build on what you said there, Knarik, about the safety of sources. What do you mean by that, and how does that translate into security behavior or security culture? Just to give a bit of context to what you mean.
Yeah, of course. So journalists, to do their job, need sources, right? So people who provide them with important information to create their stories, and sometimes they have to remain anonymous for the rest. So because that can compromise their reputation, their physical safety, and that is the building block of journalism, basically. Without us being able to protect the sources, we'll have no sources, and therefore we'll have no valuable stories, just fluff pieces, I guess. So protecting the sources is a massive part of our business, and we're very, very, very cautious when it comes to that. So only basically the journalists know, the person working with the sources knows the sources.
Yeah. So just to build on that. So what are the sort of the key mistakes that for example people in those roles might make that might make them sort of a point of attack for an attacker? What are the risks that you're trying to overcome there? And what are you trying to make them aware of in terms of the threat landscape?
Secure communication is what it builds on, right? So using secure channels of communication. If they travel, we provide them with special travel devices, travel laptops, travel phones with special encryption, I guess. And when they use tools to communicate with their sources, we suggest them using wire or signal in order to the information in transit to remain secure as well, and many other things. So whether it being very technical, sometimes journalists are not tech experts, so we have dedicated people in the newspapers who train them prior to trips if they're going somewhere, depending on the risk zone, or just if they're working on a big story, and they basically give us a heads up, like if this is sensitive, is there something I should be doing that I'm not doing? And then we discuss the risks, if there are any, and provide them with the appropriate information. So we kind of work together. We have to, because I think there is a very high awareness amongst journalists that this is very digital now.
Yeah. You've mentioned a lot of things there that I'd like to unpackage, from sort of awareness training, the tools and technologies you provide to enable secure choices, and then sort of the awareness of the threats that can manifest. So I'm interested in hearing in Marcus's perspective there as well, in terms of what are the core risks to the bank. You mentioned fraud and things like that, but is there a difference between different roles? Are there different sort of roles in the business that require more attention? How do you approach that challenge?
Well, we have been a bank since 1856, so we're quite used to bank secrecy and protect the customer's information. But now everything is digital, and we must create awareness around that. But of course, trust and reputation are among the biggest and important assets for us as a bank. In the same way as for a newspaper, as Knarik mentioned, that if the sources cannot trust that they can stay anonymous or protected, you will not get any information. And the same for a bank. If our clients, both individuals and companies, corporates, cannot trust us, keeping their information safe, secret, with high integrity and so on, we will not have any clients. So I think the biggest risk is among trust and reputation, and then we must protect the information. So in one way, we have a good culture around bank secrecy. Now we have to add the right security behavior and awareness in that. So in one way, it's maybe easier for me and for other sectors to work with security culture, but still we have to compete with, we get new regulations, we have sustainability and so on and so on. As a banker, you want to do business, and how do you make security a natural part of that?
Yeah.
And in one way, I would like to have security invisible for the users. But at the same time, we also have to create the right behavior among our clients, because the fraudsters, they know that the bank have high security, good security. Then they try social engineering on our customers, private individuals, companies, see this business email compromise, fraud, CEO fraud, etc., etc. So we also have to have the right security behavior and the awareness among our clients. And that's also an important part for me.
Yeah. I really like that point there around invisible security, because we could easily just talk about awareness and e-learning and training as being an important part. And I'm not saying that it's not. It is definitely important. But the other area that I think is less explored is the secure behavior by design. And what I mean by that is only enabling the users to have secure choices and protecting the user and being a safety net in case mistakes are made. Is that what you mean by invisible security, Marcus? Or is there any other techniques that you would recommend implementing to sort of remove that friction and retain productivity?
Yeah, we know that if you make security too complicated, the users try to find ways around it. And we can find so many examples to give. And I think you have good cases in the ISF report, Human-Centric Security, where you really analyze why do users do like this? And then really see, have we designed the security right? Shall we change it? For example, how to destroy paper. Is it okay to really walk away to the other building and destroy it? Shouldn't it be here? And so on and so on. So really think, why do users do it like this? But it's important to identify what type of risks do you have? What kind of behavior do you have today? And what kind of behavior do you want? And really also look at, have we designed the security correct?
Yeah.
And I have examples also with, for example, with this social engineering on private individuals. In Sweden, we had a security solution. The fraudster came up on different ways to do social engineering on it. We did awareness activities around it, but also strengthened and made the security solution simpler. It hasn't totally mitigated the risk, but it has improved a lot. So one has to really analyze what is the root cause, what is the best security controls, what is most efficient. And often it's where shall I do the investment, in the technical solution or in the human, and maybe 50-50 and so on.
Yeah. It's interesting. I suppose both of you have sort of that buy-in from senior management, from the board, that the human element of security is important. How would you recommend other organizations that are going through similar challenges, how would you recommend them to communicate this to senior management, to get more budget, to get investment in more progressive awareness programs, and sort of giving them budget to go on this risk assessment journey to identify the weaknesses? And Knarik, what are your thoughts there? How would an organization listening now start the journey?
That's a great question. I guess there is no size that fits all, but something that I found very effective was, how we always hear ourselves say, preach. We started a talk with it that most errors are human errors in security. So I think showcasing and telling to a broader audience, as well as the top management, real life examples of attacks on your business that your business is experiencing day to day, that makes the real impact, make it feel real. An example would be, for example, a highly sophisticated spear phishing email sent to the finance department where your real colleague sits and receives it. And, they just keep communicating perhaps for a week until the person figures out, oh, this is phishing, So not just, there's a theoretical risk, but you never experience, your colleagues never experience it. But going out with examples like this, perhaps having a talk or a presentation for your employees, invite everyone, let them ask questions, on whatever level. This is just one example, maybe a common one, but for your infrastructure team, you didn't apply updates and those vulnerability, to the server and that. And on every level, you can find an example like that will make it feel relevant and real for them. Because the ISF report on human-centered security says this too. And I think it's very big, how people think that bad things happen to others. So I think cognitive biases are, for sure impacting our decision making in this. So just bursting that bubble a little, if it's possible, that this is real, this is happening, we're experiencing this. This isn't just theoretical for us, other organizations. Here, like, I don't know, Anne in accounting received this and talked to a fraudster for 2 weeks without realizing who it was. Luckily, she was able to catch it in time before any transfer happened, but she came very close.
Yeah, no, really good point. Really good point. I suppose it's about contextualizing the what we mean by approaching this challenge and what the risks are. I'd really like to hear Marcus's opinion on that as well, because I know, having sort of seen the success of your program, what does senior management want to see from the security behavior and culture change program? How do you demonstrate a return on investment on what you've done, and what do they want to see as the impact?
First of all, I think agree with Knarik. Also storytelling, also showing by examples, and preferable examples from the own organization, and showing what is the root cause of them. The other thing is, so far, I haven't had any problem. Maybe I'm lucky with getting support and approval of security culture programs and so on. But the reason we made bigger work here during the spring was that we have made a lot of awareness activities, but we didn't know what was the effect from them, the impact, has we improved or not. So then made a business case for making it more structured, really focus on what are the risks, where shall we focus on, establish metrics, also a structured framework for working with different awareness and behavior themes. And then it was easy to, so to speak, sell it in and get approval of it. But in the end, of course, they want to see lower risk and also better efficiency, of course. And and in some parts they say, for example, security is problematic and so on. And here, by creating awareness, behavior, the right security culture, hopefully get get better security.
Yeah.
Fewer incidents, fewer human errors.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, what are your perspectives on that too, Knarik? Because I know you've embarked on a behavior change program. So what? Yeah, do you have any additional thoughts there around how to measure maybe the impact, or what are the senior managers looking for?
I think our motto has been, you can't change what you can't measure. So definitely measuring things is essential to creating meaningful change around it. And of course, senior management wants to see results. That's their ultimate goal of anything they want to invest in. So positively influencing the security posture, reducing the business impact and impact of security threats and incidents. But I think investing in a security culture is not good for security in isolation. I think it can contribute to a larger change in the organization. A positive security culture gives people confidence that they not only, that they can speak openly and see the organization improving as a result, and not that their actions, or decisions will be reviewed unfairly. So we allow them to focus on what is best for the organization rather than on protecting themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, could you expand on that a little bit? So what we found in our research is if you can translate the security message for the organization to their home lives as well, it can have quite a profound impact. So what do you mean by that last comment?
So that you don't act in a secure manner so that you don't get in trouble, but you do it because you believe that this is a part of a bigger thing, that your actions are important, and that if you find something that's flawed, if you find an error somewhere, if say you don't like the trainings that your security team is doing, you can talk to them and say, this doesn't work for me. And 10 more people will probably come up to them and say, we agree. Do it differently. And that they're not going to be they're going to see a change as a result of it, because we're going to listen to them, and we're going to take feedback, and they will see meaningful change. Or if they find something bigger, technical, someplace something is broken, and they see this is a potential risk, we should fix this. So instead of them being like, oh, why don't you stick to your part of the job, why are you poking around, they're gonna be listened to and will fix the things that they found. So just that openness and good communication, and actually seeing positive change as a result of being able to speak your mind, I think contributes to a good security culture.
Yeah, I love that collaboration, that feedback loop between who's receiving the training or awareness or knowledge, education, and then on the other side, who's actually giving it. So that back and forth is important, to feel like they have ownership really of the outputs.
But
I mean,
to just say a few words about how it impacts them in their private life. We've just been talking today on doing something called crypto party. Have you guys heard about it? So apparently it's an old initiative on teaching people how to encrypt their devices. So obviously all business devices nowadays are encrypted, like your phones, laptops, you name it. But are your private devices, are you applying the same level of security to them? So we thought to do a little crypto party and teach people how to encrypt their private devices, because they probably have never encrypted their own work devices. They're centrally managed. So we'll have some pizza and some drinks and teach people how to encrypt stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What's the attendees looking like? Have you had many registrations? I suppose when you offer pizza, it's
skyrockets.
Yeah, sign me up. You've made some really good points there around making security relevant, and I'm interested in, Marcus, what are your perspectives on that? And I'm asking because when I think of a bank, I think of quite a diverse group, got kind of salespeople, operations, back-end staff, very different roles with different perceptions and attitudes towards security. So how do you make security relevant for the entire workforce if people don't really perceive it to be important or not their role?
Also a good question. But in one way, we have the bank secrecy also protecting the customer. So they know that this is important. The staff wants to do right, but sometimes they don't know how. In some cases, they don't know why or what. So here also it's important to have this why, what, and how, and tell that. And sometimes we just explain how. You shall not click on links, but don't tell why. Sometimes we tell them what to do, but they don't know how to do it. So we must have the whole chain with why, what, and how to explain that and create that. I also think that when working with security culture and this awareness, it's important to have it in the culture, tone from the top. We have code of conduct to include also security in that and have it in the business culture that this is important. We have worked a lot, the HR, during the last 5 years with the leadership and management. What is a manager? What is a leader? And here, back to what you said, Knarik, and we call it psychological safety. It should be okay to say, to report errors. It's about accountability, not blame, and so on. If we don't get incident reports and if someone tries to hide an error and so on, it gets bigger. It's exactly in the movies where the good guy tries to fix an error and it becomes greater and greater and then it's a catastrophe in the end. It's the same here. You shall have the possibility to say, this is wrong, why don't we do like this, and so on and so on. So this psychological safety is very important. And also I'm thinking on another area, Google's Aristotle program, where they looked at what makes a team efficient. And one part is psychological safety and other things. And here we immediately see that also that by doing that, having the right security culture, we can contribute to efficiency also. So I think we have a lot to learn from other areas. Another example which I can think of also is if we want to change behavior, how do they do in other areas? For example, if you want to stop smoking, lose some weight, or change behavior in the society, we want the citizens to do like this. How do we change that?
Yeah.
And also incorporate that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how we approached the human-centered security papers. So looking at behavior at scale and culture holistically. So we can provide training, we can provide education, we can provide e-learning, but there are other techniques that we can take to influence. And you have to do all of those things together in order to change behavior. Now, for some people on the line, e-learning, phishing, training, they all make sense. They're things that people have done historically. I would argue it's a bit of a compliance-led approach. What initiatives have you seen in your organizations that have worked really well that are different to awareness, typical awareness or e-learning? What have you seen? And I'll ask Knarik first. What are the sort of good case studies or initiatives you've seen at Schibsted?
That work or didn't work?
That worked. Yeah, we'll start with what worked, and then we'll look at what didn't work.
What worked? Recently, we've invested in trainer-led advanced developer security training, and those were massively successful. I think investing in such programs that are very targeted, very customized, and just like tailored to their needs to perfection are going to have a very high success rate. Now, obviously, if you want to do them yourself, you have to have a whole full dedicated team, or you buy the service, which is what we did. And it is worth all the money, honestly. And this provided them with, skills they needed to do their job properly, because even though they have security as a part of their job, everyone does, I would argue, but especially developers, because they build things, they have to have the skills, and they have to be up to date in this ever evolving world, but their workload is so high and they have to be so productive that they might not have the time to sit down and learn and invest in security training, even if we provide them with like on-demand available trainings. They might just never prioritize it. Their managers might never prioritize it. But this, allowing them 2 days, full day trainings, that they're just like, they're concentrated, there are trainers to help them along the way, do the challenges. It's very interactive, helps with team building as well, because they can do it with their teammates, with their colleagues. This, I think, was one of the things that was one of the most successful security awareness initiatives we've done.
Yeah, definitely. So really targeted, tailored content specific to the role, rather than blanket awareness for everyone. Because I think that goes back to our first point, was every individual, every role will experience different threats. So someone in finance will not experience the same threats as for example, someone that works in the post office. So if they're both receiving the same e-learning, the postal person will probably look and say, well, that's not going to impact me. What? And they'll just click through.
Also, different level of competence as well, right? So people with tech backgrounds usually have a higher level of tech competence, which also translates into security competence, and vice versa. So having a baseline training is good, but you're never, if you're aiming for that 100% completion rate, or 100% people do the training, if you get it, it's a false percentage, because a good chunk of people just click through because it is such low value content for them that they've probably never watched it. Their managers just keep nagging them to do it, so they fast forward it through.
It's true.
And
Marcus,
add value when you can, real value.
Yeah, just building on that exact point there, Marcus. How do you add value? How do you add value to the different roles that are receiving the training or education or awareness? What's worked particularly well for you?
Well, often, as Knarik said, it's when it's tailored for the role, not the general one. It must be relevant. And we have also used this private individual aspect, also helping you in your private life. That helps a lot. But I would also say that when working with security, it's often very important about this why, communicate the why, to create awareness, the storytelling, and also storytelling from which are relevant, cases from financial sector, banks. Also communicate the threat landscape. We see that nowadays we focus more and more on having the right intelligence, communicate that, create awareness around the threat landscape. And then you have the why. Then people, different roles, starts to ask on what and how. So you get the more, not the push, more pull. And then it's easier to help create awareness around that. Then you already have created the awareness.
Yeah.
And sometimes also when you want to make a change, also it's important what kind of language do you use. This example is not exactly awareness, but for example, I think many companies are introducing zero trust and so on. And zero trust, that's quite negative. We are talking about kill chain and so on. So it's the language we use, we must be careful with that. So we have instead changed zero trust to always verify.
Yes.
And also having the business case, you don't need any password anymore. It will be more user-friendly. It will be more secure. It will be single sign-on. You don't have to remember a lot of passwords and so on and so on. And talking about always verify. Another example which we recently also have started is this with security patching, lifecycle management, and so on. It sounds very boring, but when we say always up to date, we shall always be up to date. Then it's more positive. So I think we have to be more positive in our communication also and see at the bright side of security, not all the difficult things and the dark things. Of course, we shall talk about the threat landscape, but also saying we secure it, but we also enable business and so on and so on.
Yeah, I mean, you've made a ton of really interesting points there, yeah, we've only got about 10 minutes left, I think. But what I've taken away from that is you have to proactively sort of profile the threat landscape and proactively tell the users about the threats that could manifest in their roles. Now, I want to sort of echo what both of you were saying in that presentation there, and I think it's a multifaceted challenge that a lot of security practitioners just think awareness is the answer, whereas what Marcus was saying there was create a secure choice, an ecosystem that is inherently secure for the end user, that is psychologically safe, that won't give them the opportunity to compromise the organization anyway. Now, in my humble opinion, I think training, education, and awareness is there to help people both in their job role, but also at home. Because if you can translate it into something that's meaningful, relevant, impactful, then yeah, people are going to be secure in their entire lives.
Yes.
But look, I can see some questions already firing through in the background there. So I'm going to spend a bit of time posing the questions from the audience to you guys on the line. One really interesting question that I saw come through was about incentives. In my opinion, I think incentives are a really challenging area psychologically to focus on. But the question here is, and then I'll pass this on to Knarik first, and then Marcus, please do jump in. It says, if you're going to build security responsibility into roles and responsibilities, would you suggest monetizing this by making it a percentage of their annual bonus? Do you think financial incentives or incentives of any format are helpful? What are your opinions?
So we have discussed this in our team. It keeps coming back every now and then. And I don't think you should have any incentive, especially financial. You can have, kudos from your colleagues, you can get praise, but that should be about it. Why? Is because I think there's a danger zone. And that is, what if they, intentionally create things to then magically solve them?
Yeah.
Of course, we trust our employees. We don't think they have evil intent. But if you create that possibility, they might give into temptation or just try and see what happens, out of curiosity. So just don't do that. Is what me and my team think. We do have. We recently launched a bug bounty program, where white hackers can try and exploit any vulnerabilities and let us know if they find anything, and therefore get a monetary reward for it. So after that, many employees asked, "Can we participate?" And the answer is no, because it's already part of your job.
Fair enough. What are your thoughts there, Marcus? And we'll do both sides. So you can incentivize, you can also sort of give a sort of a punishment as well. What are your thoughts on both of those sides? Have you seen that work well in your organization or any organization?
Well, we haven't tried that. We have, of course, I think every security professional have been thinking on incentives or punishment for security violations. But I think other incentive programs can be counterproductive for security. So it's more about the company culture. What kind of culture do you want in your company? Is it that you really have to fulfill your business goals to get your incentive, your bonus, and so on, the bonus programs and so on? They can be counterproductive in that sense. So it's more like having a sound culture and risk culture, security culture in your company. Have a good, sound code of conduct, social responsibility, etc. So more working with that than incentives. More working with why and what.
I agree.
I think people want to do right.
Mm.
It's not necessary to have incentives.
Yeah, I think just to build on that. So in our first human-centered security paper, we looked at the cognitive biases that Knarik referenced at the beginning of the presentation. And one that we looked at is called the over-justification effect. And what it means is, it means there's a loss of motivation and interest as a result of receiving excessive external rewards. So what that means in the real world, for example, if you're a child and your parent says, if you eat your vegetables, you'll get ice cream. If you remove that ice cream, the motivation to eat vegetables is not there.
Yeah.
You can imagine in the security realm, if you report security incidents and you'll get paid, well, take away that payment, then what happens?
Yes.
It builds up a resentment, mistrust, all that kind of stuff. So think long and hard about incentives and punishment. And that's the reason why we've got this talk. Is it's culture. It's a holistic thing.
Yeah.
It's training. It's the policies, right? It's having it visible, business aligned, taking a risk-based approach, getting closer to the users, giving them what they want in the medium that they want, making it entertaining, relevant, impactful.
And how do we build the psychological safety with punishment? I think that's hard.
Exactly.
If possible.
Well, look, I mean, there's a couple more questions coming in, but I think we're almost out of time. So what I usually do in these panel sessions is I typically ask the presenters to just summarize the key things that you would leave the listeners with. So I'll go to Knarik first. If you were to sort of summarize, what are the kind of key steps to embark on a transformative behavior change program? What's the value?
How to summarize? Let's see. I would say just to give you a couple of bullets would be, I want to start from the end to the beginning. So what Marcus said just recently, making the secure choice the first choice. Sorry if I'm paraphrasing, but basically see security by design and add value on top of that. So using MFA, allowing only MFA and making it as simple as possible. Give people free YubiKeys. I don't know. Allow them to use that in their private life. Make it as passwordless as possible, because that is the most secure option in the end. Have tailored trainings and have your management team, if they're not already on board, get them on board by, explain them why you're doing it, keep it simple, provide them with data, why you're doing this, have a risk catalog, updated regularly, present how the human part fits into it and how it overall affects your risk score, etc. and get funding and invest it in the right things.
All right, thank you. And then, Marcus, any kind of parting points? Any to summarize? What is the?
I think
what's the way
Knarik
forward?
took everyone almost. But I think it's important to both work with the security culture from the top, but also from awareness and behavior from below, bottom up. So having those two approaches, but do it risk-based, measure, have metrics. Otherwise, you cannot do continuous improvement.
Yeah.
And I think, and
Absolutely.
hopefully, we empower our employees, our customers, making them more safe, and also hopefully more happier.
Yeah.
Because then they feel more confident that they do right, that they protect the information, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone on the line, anyone listening, we do have some attachments on the Bright Talk here. So where that small paperclip is, have a click on there. So we've made our 2 human-centered security papers publicly available. Now, the first one, it explores the fundamental reasons why humans make mistakes. So why the decision-making process is so flawed, and the types of techniques attackers can use to manipulate people. Now, the second paper is probably more valuable in terms of tangibility. So when it comes to designing a security behavior and culture change program, having that process in place where you can measure the organization now, design initiatives that are relevant, and then measure the impact again, take a look at that one. So that's the human-centered security positively influencing security behavior. Now, look, Knarik, Marcus, thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Knarik, for jumping in last minute as well, replacing Ralph. So really do appreciate having you here. Your insights are always incredibly valuable. And for anyone listening, to find out about any other future ISF webinars, events, and insightful content, please visit the securityforum.org public website. Any members that are on the line, visit isflive.org and you'll find far more available events, reports, and content for you. If you have missed anything from this webinar, it will be available on demand on our ISF Bright Talk channel. Really do hope that you've enjoyed today's session, and feel free to leave the rating down below. Thank you so much for listening. And the final piece I'd like to leave you with is we are running a cyber attack simulation exercise on October 6th in Stockholm. So any individuals that are in Sweden at that time, have a click on the attachment there, explore the event, and we'll see if there's some available seats for that. But it'd be incredible to have you there. It's all about sort of testing the crisis response during a cyber crisis. So yeah, learn from your peers, learn from the ISF experts. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Knarik. Thank you, Marcus. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you, Dan, for having me. And I hope, even I'm no CISO, I was able to cover some of the key points.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.